Lee Tae-min looked out the window of the starship Harmony's Edge and saw nothing but empty space filled with distant stars. He had been on many ships before, but this one felt different. This ship carried 12 different alien species, all going to the same place for the most important meeting in galactic history. Tae-min was 34 years old and had spent 10 years as a soldier before becoming a diplomat. His black hair was cut short, and his dark eyes showed the calm look of someone who had seen many battles. He wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic service. The other humans on the ship often joked that he looked too serious, but Tae-min knew that serious times needed serious people. The ship's hallways buzzed with activity. Alien crew members moved back and forth, preparing for their arrival at Kepler 442b. Tae-min watched a tall reptilian creature walk past. This was Captain Vextar, the ship's commander. His green scales caught the light as he moved, and his yellow eyes seemed to see everything at once. Vextar had been polite to the human crew, but Tae-min could tell the captain thought humans were weak. "Still looking worried?" asked a voice behind him. Tae-min turned to see Dr. Yun-So-Ra walking toward him. She was a xenobiologist, which meant she studied alien life forms. So-Ra was 28 years old with shoulder-length black hair and bright, curious eyes. She carried a data pad filled with information about the creatures they might meet during their mission. "Not worried," Tae-min said. "Just thinking. About the peace talks? About whether they will work." Tae-min turned back to the window. 12 species have been fighting for 50 years. Some of them hate each other so much they can barely stay on the same ship. So-Ra nodded. She had seen the tension, too. The Corvani reptiles thought the insect-like Chithari were disgusting. The Chithari believed the furry Velthari were primitive animals. The Velthari called the rock-skinned Brugans stupid. Everyone seemed to have a reason to dislike someone else. At least they think humans are harmless, So-Ra said with a small smile. "That makes us good mediators." "Harmless," Tae-min repeated the word slowly. He had heard it many times since joining the diplomatic corps. The aliens saw humans as a young, weak species that was good at talking but bad at fighting. They thought humans were useful because they could help solve problems without taking sides. "You don't like being called harmless," So-Ra observed. "I don't like being underestimated." Before So-Ra could answer, the ship's communication system came alive. "All diplomatic staff report to Briefing Room 7, announced a mechanical voice. Tae-min. And So-Ra walked through the corridors toward the briefing room. They passed the engineering section where Park Min-ho was checking power systems. Min-ho was a short, stocky man with thick arms and hands that were always dirty from working on machines. He waved at them as they passed. "How are the engines?" So-Ra called out. "Running smooth," Min-ho replied. "This ship is built well. Should get us to Kepler 442b with no problems." They continued walking and saw Choi Hee-jin at her navigation station. Hee-jin was tall and thin with sharp eyes that never missed details. She was calculating their route and checking for any ships that might be following them. "Any problems with our course?" Tae-min asked. "No, but I'm seeing some strange readings," Hye-jin said, frowning at her screens. "There might be another ship about 2 light hours behind us. It's hard to tell for sure." "Pirates?" So-Ra asked. "Could be, or just a cargo ship on the same route." Hye-jin shrugged. "I'll keep watching." The briefing room was already crowded when they arrived. Ambassador Threll from the Chithari delegation sat at one end of the table. The insect-like creature's 4 arms moved constantly as he spoke to his assistants. His compound eyes reflected the room's lights like tiny mirrors. Captain Vexitar stood at the front of the room, his scales darker than usual. This meant he was stressed or angry. "The peace talks will begin in 18 hours, he announced. "All species must follow the neutral zone protocols. No weapons, no personal guards, no aggressive displays." A large, gray-skinned Bruggen named Security Chief Grolnax spoke up. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "What about security? The neutral zone has rules, but not everyone follows rules. The Kepler 442b security forces will handle protection," Vextar replied. "They have experience with multi-species gatherings." Taemin listened to the discussion, but his mind wandered to what Sora had told him earlier about her research. She had been studying the most dangerous predators from different worlds. One creature in particular seemed to terrify every alien species she talked to. After the briefing, Taemin found Sora in the ship's small laboratory. She was looking at holographic images of various alien creatures on her computer screen. "Tell me about that predator you mentioned yesterday," he said. "The one that scares everyone." Sora's face became serious. "The Nexus Stalker. It's from a planet called Xerion Prime. 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor, claws that can cut through steel, and faster than almost anything else in the galaxy. What makes it so dangerous?" "Intelligence. Most predators are just animals, but Nexus stalkers are smart. They hunt in packs, set traps, and they seem to enjoy causing fear before they kill." Sora switched to a new image, showing claw marks on a metal wall. These marks were found on a research station. Everyone there was killed. "Have you ever seen one?" "No, and I hope I never do. Even mentioning them makes most aliens nervous. Captain Vexitar actually asked me to stop researching them because it was making the crew uncomfortable." Taemin studied the image. The creature looked like a nightmare made real, but he found himself thinking like a soldier. Every creature had weaknesses. Every enemy could be defeated if you knew how. "What's interesting," Sora continued, "is that humans are never mentioned in any of the Predator databases. It's like the galaxy doesn't consider us dangerous at all." "Maybe that's for the best," Taemin said, but part of him disagreed. His military training had taught him that being underestimated could be an advantage, but it could also be dangerous. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and the mechanical voice announced, "All crew to stations. Unknown vessel approaching. Repeat, unknown vessel approaching." Taemin and Sora rushed to the nearest observation window. In the distance, they could see another ship moving toward them. It was smaller than the Harmony's Edge, but looked heavily armed. Captain Vextar's voice came over the communication system. "Unknown vessel. Identify yourself. You are entering restricted space." There was a long pause before a rough voice answered, "This is the cargo ship Iron Fang. We have engine problems and need assistance." Taemin looked at Sora. Something about the other ship's captain didn't sound right. His years as a soldier had taught him to trust his instincts when something felt wrong. "Sora," he said quietly, "how big did you say a Nexus stalker was?" "About 3 meters. "Why?" "Just curious." Taemin continued watching the approaching ship, and a cold feeling settled in his stomach. He hoped he was wrong, but experience had taught him that hope wasn't always enough. The cargo ship Iron Fang moved closer to the Harmony's Edge. Captain Vextar had agreed to let them dock for emergency repairs, but Taemin noticed that Security Chief Grolnax had positioned armed guards near the docking bay. The massive Bruggens, Gray skin looked darker than usual, which meant he was ready for trouble. "Something feels wrong about this," Pilot Quan Dong-su said as he joined Taemin at the observation window. Dong-su was a skilled pilot with quick reflexes and sharp instincts. His hands were always steady, even in dangerous situations. "I agree," Taemin replied. "Their ship doesn't look damaged." Through the window, they watched the docking process. The iron fang attached to their ship with a loud clang that echoed through the hull. Minutes passed in tense silence before the airlock opened. 3 aliens stepped onto the Harmony's edge. They looked like different species, but all of them moved like fighters. The leader was a tall, thin creature with purple skin and too many teeth. His companions included a short, furry being with mechanical arms and a reptile that looked similar to Captain Vexitar but meaner. "I am Captain Rax," the purple-skinned leader announced. "We thank you for your help with our engine problems." Captain Vexitar stepped forward. "What exactly is wrong with your engines?" "Power coupling failure," Rax said quickly. "Very dangerous. We need spare parts." Taemin watched the exchange from a distance. Engineer Park Min-ho stood nearby, ready to help with any mechanical problems. Min-ho was good with machines, but Taemin could see that he was suspicious too. The engineers. Han stayed close to his tools, ready to use them as weapons if needed. "I'll need to see your engine room to diagnose the problem," Min-ho said. "No!" Rax said too quickly. "I mean, it's too dangerous right now. Radiation leaks. Very bad for most species." That was when Taemin knew for certain that something was wrong. Radiation leaks would be dangerous for all species, not just most of them. He started moving toward the communication panel to alert the bridge, but stopped when he heard a strange sound coming from the iron fang. It was a low, rumbling growl that seemed to come from something very large and very angry. Navigator Choi Hye-jin was at her station when the sound reached her. Her face went pale, and she quickly started scanning the other ship with every sensor they had. What she found made her hands shake as she typed. "Captain," Hye-jin called over the communication system, "I'm reading a large life form on the other ship. Very large. And the cargo bay shows signs of damaged containment systems." Captain Vextar's scales turned almost black. "What kind of life form?" Before Hye-jin could answer, the growling sound got louder. Then came a sound that made every alien on the ship freeze in terror, the screech of tearing metal. "Containment breach!" someone screamed from the iron fang. "It's loose! The stalker is loose!" Captain Rax and his crew suddenly dropped their pretense. They pulled out weapons and started running toward the iron fang's exit. "We're leaving!" Rax shouted. "Good luck with your new passenger!" Security Chief Grolnax moved faster than anyone expected for such a large creature. He grabbed Rax before the smuggler could escape. "What have you brought onto our ship?" "A Nexus stalker," Rax gasped. "Worth millions on the black market, but the containment field failed when we docked. It's free now." The sound of tearing metal grew louder. Through the open airlock, they could see flashing red lights in the Iron Fang's cargo bay. Something was destroying everything in its path, working its way toward their ship. "Seal the airlock," Captain Vextar commanded. "Too late!" Engineer Park. Min-ho shouted from his position near the docking controls. "It's already crossed over!" A massive shape moved through the shadows of the cargo bay. Taemin caught a glimpse of something that looked like a nightmare. 3 meters tall, covered in black armor-like skin, with claws that gleamed like swords. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness, and when it opened its mouth, rows of sharp teeth caught the light. The Nexus Stalker had arrived. "Emergency lockdown," Captain Vexitar ordered. "Seal all sections. Get to the safe areas." Blast doors began closing throughout the ship, dividing it into separate sections. The alien crew members ran in panic. Ambassador Threll's 4 arms waved wildly as he screeched commands in his own language. The Velthari delegates were chittering in fear, and even the tough Brugans looked worried. "Where's Dr. Yun So-ra?" Tae-min asked, suddenly realizing he hadn't seen her since the alarm started. "Medical bay," Navigator Choi Hye-jin replied. She was checking the emergency medical supplies. Taemin's blood turned cold. The medical bay was in Section C, and the blast doors had already closed. Sora was trapped on the same side of the ship as the Nexus Stalker. Security Chief Grolnax was organizing his guards when Taemin approached him. Despite being one of the galaxy's most feared warrior species, the Bruggen looked nervous. "We need to get Dr. Yun So-ra out of Section C," Taemin said. Grolnax shook his massive head. "Section C is sealed. No one goes in or out until the creature is contained." "How do you plan to contain it?" "We don't." Grolnax's rock-like skin had turned almost white with fear. "No one fights a Nexus Stalker and lives. We wait for it to leave, or we vent the entire section to space. You'd kill Dr. Yun So-ra? Better one death than everyone on the ship." Tae-min stared at the alien security chief. This creature was supposed to be a fearless warrior, trained to fight the most dangerous enemies in the galaxy, but the mere presence of the Nexus Stalker had turned him into a coward. Engineer Park Min-ho was trapped in the engineering section when the lockdown happened. He could hear the creature moving through the ventilation system above him. The metal groaned and bent under its weight. Min-ho had worked on many ships and knew every sound they made, but this was different. This was the sound of something incredibly strong, tearing through steel like paper. He tried to stay quiet, but his breathing seemed too loud. Every tool in his workshop felt inadequate against what was hunting him. Min-ho had strong arms from years of manual labor, but strength meant nothing against a creature that could tear through starship hulls. Through the security monitors, the crew watched in horror as the Nexus Stalker moved through the ship. It seemed to be learning the layout, testing doors and walls, searching for prey. Its intelligence was terrifying. This wasn't just a wild animal. It was a calculating predator that understood its environment. "It's heading toward the medical bay," Navigator Choi Hye-jin reported, her voice shaking. On the monitor, they could see Dr. Yun So-ra in the medical bay. She had barricaded herself behind a table, clutching a small laser scalpel that would be useless against the creature's armored hide. Her usually calm face showed pure terror as she heard the sound of approaching claws. Captain Vextar was studying tactical displays when pilot Kwon Dong-soo approached him. "Captain, we could evacuate the medical bay through the maintenance tunnels." "Too dangerous," Vextar replied. "The creature would detect any movement. So we just let Dr. Yun So-ra die?" "We protect the majority. One life cannot be worth risking everyone." Tae-min had heard enough. While the aliens debated and made excuses, So-ra was facing death alone. He walked to the emergency equipment locker and pulled out a maintenance kit containing basic tools: a plasma cutter, a magnetic grappler, and a small emergency light. "What are you doing?" Captain Vextar asked. "What needs to be done?" "You cannot fight a Nexus Stalker, even our strongest. Warriors would not survive." Tae-min looked at the captain's scales, which had turned so dark they were almost black with fear. Maybe that's the problem. He started walking toward the sealed blast door. Security Chief Grolnax moved to block his path. "I cannot let you commit suicide," the Bruggen said. "Then don't think of it as suicide." Taemin met the alien's eyes without flinching. Think of it as something your species doesn't understand. What? A human keeping a promise. Before anyone could stop him, Taemin activated the emergency override on the blast door. It opened just enough for him to slip through before closing again. On the other side, the corridor was dark and filled with the sound of distant hunting. As he moved toward the medical bay, Taemin could hear the aliens arguing behind the sealed door. They were debating whether to open the blast door again or let him face the creature alone. Their fear was stronger than their desire to help. That was fine with him. Fear could be useful, but only if you knew how to control it instead of letting it control you. In the darkness ahead, something roared. Lee Taemin moved through the dark corridors of Section C with careful, quiet steps. The emergency lighting cast long shadows that seemed to move and shift around him. He held the plasma cutter in one hand and the magnetic grappler in the other. But he knew these tools would barely scratch the Nexus Stalker's armored hide. The corridor walls showed deep claw marks where the creature had passed. The metal was torn like paper, with some gouges going completely through to the inner hull. Taemin had seen battle damage before, but nothing like this. Whatever made these marks was stronger than any weapon he had ever encountered. He followed the trail of destruction toward the medical bay. Dark fluid dripped from the ceiling where the creature had moved through the ventilation system. Taemin touched the liquid and brought it to his nose. It smelled like copper and sulfur, the Nexus Stalker's scent. From somewhere ahead came the sound of Dr. Yunso-Ra's voice, high and frightened. "Stay back! Stay away from me!" Then came another sound that made Taemin's skin crawl, a low, rumbling laugh. The Nexus Stalker was toying with its prey, enjoying her fear before moving in for the kill. Behind the sealed blast door, the alien crew watched through security cameras. Captain Vextar's scales had turned completely black, and his hands shook as he gripped the control console. "The human has no chance," Ambassador Threll said, his compound eyes reflecting the monitor's light. "Nexus Stalkers have killed entire military units. One diplomat with basic tools cannot succeed where warriors have failed." "Maybe we should help him," suggested Navigator Choi Hae-jin through the communication system. "Help him die faster?" Security Chief Grolnax replied. "No. We stay here and hope the creature follows him when it leaves the medical bay." Pilot Kwon Dong-soo watched the monitors with growing anger. "You're all cowards. Dr. Yun-So-Ra is part of this crew, and Taemin is risking his life to save her." "Taemin is throwing his life away," Captain Vextar corrected. "Humans do not understand the reality of apex predators. They think bravery can overcome biology." On the monitor, they could see Taemin getting closer to the medical bay. He moved differently than the aliens expected. While they would either charge forward or run away, he moved like a hunter tracking dangerous prey. He studied the claw marks, listened to sounds, and planned his approach. "Look at how he moves," Engineer Park Min-ho observed from his position in the engineering section. "He's not acting like prey, he's acting like a predator." "Impossible," Ambassador Threll chittered. "Humans are herbivores, plant-eaters. They have no predator instincts." "Then why is he hunting instead of running?" Inside the medical bay, Dr. Yun-So-Ra had built a small fortress out of medical equipment. Surgical tables, supply cabinets, and monitoring devices formed a barrier between her and the entrance. She held a laser scalpel in one hand and a chemical spray in the other, knowing both were useless against what was coming for her. The Nexus Stalker appeared in the doorway like a living shadow. 3 meters of muscle and armor with red eyes. that seemed to glow in the darkness. Its claws scraped against the metal floor as it studied her makeshift defenses. The creature's intelligence was terrifying. It was calculating the best way to get past her barriers while causing maximum fear. "Please," Sora whispered. "Just make it quick." The creature tilted its head and made that rumbling laugh again. Quick deaths were not part of its nature. It preferred to hunt, to terrify, to break its prey's spirit before breaking their body. It began dismantling her defenses piece by piece. Each surgical table was torn apart and thrown aside. Medical equipment worth millions of credits was destroyed, like children's toys. The creature was demonstrating its power, showing Sora that nothing could protect her. Taemin reached the medical bay just as the Nexus Stalker broke through Sora's final barrier. He could see the creature's back as it prepared to grab her. Without hesitation, he activated the plasma cutter and aimed for the creature's spine. The beam struck the Nexus Stalker's armored hide and bounced off harmlessly. The creature turned toward him with those glowing red eyes, annoyed that its hunt had been interrupted. "Run, Taemin!" Sora screamed. "Get out of here!" But Taemin didn't run. He stepped into the medical bay and spread his arms wide, making himself a bigger target. "Come on, then," he said quietly. "Let's see what you've got." The Nexus Stalker studied this new threat. Humans were not in its genetic memory as dangerous prey. They were small, weak creatures that other species used for diplomacy. This one carried primitive tools and showed no fear, which was puzzling but not concerning. The creature decided to kill the human quickly, then returned to playing with the female. It lunged forward with its signature attack, a lightning-fast strike, meant to tear out the target's throat. What happened next surprised everyone watching. Instead of dodging backward like every other species would do, Taemin stepped forward and to the side. The Nexus Stalker's claws passed through empty air as he moved inside its reach. The creature's own momentum carried it past him, and for a moment, it was off balance. Taemin didn't waste the opportunity. He brought the magnetic grappler down, hard on the creature's leg joint, where the armor was thinner. The impact didn't cause serious damage, but it hurt enough to get the creature's attention. The Nexus Stalker spun around, anger replacing its earlier amusement. This human was not behaving like prey. Prey ran or froze in terror. They didn't attack back. "Impossible," Captain Vextar whispered as he watched the monitor. "He cannot be fighting it. The creature should have killed him already." "Look at its posture," Engineer Park Minho said. "The Stalker is confused. It doesn't know what to do with an opponent that fights instead of running." The creature attacked again, this time with both claws extended. Taemin rolled under the strike and came up behind the Nexus Stalker. He grabbed a broken piece of surgical equipment and drove it toward the creature's neck. The improvised weapon shattered against the armored hide, but the attack forced the creature to turn and face him again. They were now in the center of the medical bay, surrounded by the wreckage of Sora's defenses. "Why isn't he running?" Ambassador Threll asked, his voice high with confusion. "Every intelligent species runs from a Nexus Stalker. It's the only logical response." "Maybe humans aren't logical," Pilot Quan Dong-Su said. "Maybe there's something else." The fight continued with neither side gaining a clear advantage. The Nexus Stalker was faster and stronger, but Taemin was unpredictable. He used tactics the creature had never encountered. Feints, grappling attempts, and attacks that targeted joints and weak points. Most importantly, he kept fighting even when injured. The creature's claws had opened cuts on his arms and chest, but Taemin ignored the pain. Every species the Nexus Stalker had fought before would be weakened by such wounds. Humans apparently just got angrier. "He's learning," Dr. Yun Sora observed from her position behind an overturned table. "Each time the creature attacks, Taemin responds better." She was right. With every exchange, Taemin was studying his opponent. He was learning the creature's attack patterns, its preferred strikes, and most importantly, its weaknesses. The Nexus Stalker began to realize it was in a real fight. This small human was not going to run or beg for mercy. Worse, the human seemed to be getting more dangerous as the battle continued. For the first time in its life, the apex predator felt something it had never experienced before: uncertainty. The creature backed toward the medical bay's entrance, its red eyes never leaving Taemin. It was reconsidering its approach, trying to understand what kind of threat it was actually facing. Taemin saw the hesitation and smiled grimly. "Having second thoughts?" he asked, blood running down his face from a cut near his eye. The Nexus Stalker's response was a roar of pure rage. If intimidation and quick kills wouldn't work, it would rely on brute force and overwhelming violence. The real battle was about to begin. The Nexus Stalker's roar echoed through the medical bay as it abandoned all strategy for pure, savage assault. The creature had never needed to fight this hard against any opponent. Its usual tactics of fear and quick kills had failed against this strange human who refused to act like prey. Lee Taemin wiped blood from his eyes and prepared for the creature's final attack. His diplomatic uniform was torn and soaked with blood, but his dark eyes remained focused and calm. Years of military training had taught him that the most dangerous moment in any fight was when a superior enemy became desperate. The Nexus Stalker launched itself across the medical bay with incredible speed, its claws extended like swords, aiming to cut Taemin in half. But instead of dodging, Taemin did something that surprised everyone watching. He charged forward to meet the attack. The two opponents collided in the center of the destroyed medical bay. Taemin's left shoulder took a glancing blow from the creature's claws, opening deep cuts, but his momentum carried him inside the stalker's reach, where its long limbs couldn't generate full power. Taemin wrapped his arms around the creature's torso and used his own weight to drive both of them into the medical bay's wall. The impact shook the entire section of the ship. The Nexus Stalker's armored back struck the metal wall with tremendous force, denting the reinforced hull. "He's grappling with it," Security Chief Grolnak said in amazement as he watched the security monitor. "No species grapples with a Nexus. Stalker, you run or you die quickly." "Look at the creature's eyes," Dr. Yun Sora observed from her hiding place. "It's afraid." She was right. For the first time in its life, the apex predator was experiencing fear. It had been grabbed and slammed by something it had dismissed as weak prey. The Nexus Stalker's red eyes showed confusion and growing panic. The creature tried to break free from Taemin's grip, but the human held on despite the claws tearing at his back and arms. Taemin had learned something important. The Nexus Stalker's armor was designed to protect against slashing attacks and energy weapons, but it was vulnerable to crushing force applied at joint connections. He shifted his grip and drove his knee into the creature's elbow joint where the armor plates met. The impact produced a satisfying crack, and the stalker's right arm went limp. Its most dangerous weapon was now useless. The creature screeched in pain and rage, a sound that made every alien on the ship cover their ears. It had never been injured. Before, never felt real pain from an opponent. The sensation was as terrifying as it was agonizing. "Impossible," Ambassador Threll chittered, his 4 arms waving frantically. "The human is winning. How can a soft species defeat an apex predator? Maybe humans aren't as soft as we thought, Engineer Park Min-ho replied from his position in engineering. Through the security feeds, he could see Taimin methodically dismantling the galaxy's most feared creature, using techniques that no other species had ever attempted. Captain Vextar's scales had turned from black to a sickly yellow color. This changes everything. If humans can kill Nexus stalkers, then what else can they do? The battle in the medical bay continued with brutal intensity. The Nexus stalker, now fighting with only one functional arm, tried to use its powerful legs to kick Taimin away. But the human had studied the creature's anatomy during their fight and knew exactly where to strike. Taimin grabbed the creature's injured arm and used it as leverage to swing himself around to the stalker's back. Before the creature could react, he wrapped his arms around its neck and applied pressure to cut off its air supply. The Nexus stalker had never been choked before. No other species was strong enough or crazy enough to attempt such a tactic against a creature with razor-sharp claws and armored skin. It thrashed wildly, trying to reach back and tear Taimin off, but its remaining functional arm couldn't bend. Far enough. "He's choking it!" Pilot Quan Dong-su said in wonder. "A human is choking the most dangerous predator in the galaxy." The creature's movements became more desperate as it struggled for air. It slammed backward into the wall, trying to crush Taimin, but the human held on despite the impacts that would have killed most other species. His military training had included resistance to pain and the ability to function while injured. What the aliens didn't understand was that humans had evolved on a death world. Earth was a planet where apex predators were common, where early humans had to compete with creatures far larger and stronger than themselves. Humanity had survived by developing persistence, intelligence, and most importantly, the ability to keep fighting when any rational creature would give up. The Nexus stalkers. Struggles grew weaker as oxygen deprivation took effect. Its red eyes began to dim, and its thrashing became uncoordinated. For the first time in its species' history, an apex predator was losing a fight. "The creature is dying," Dr. Yun So-ra whispered. But Taimin wasn't finished. Even as the stalker weakened, he knew that releasing pressure would give the creature a chance to recover and attack again. Instead, he adjusted his grip and began to apply rotational force to the creature's neck. The watching aliens fell silent as they realized what the human was attempting. He wasn't just trying to knock the creature unconscious. He was trying to break its neck. "No species is strong enough to do that," Security Chief Grolnak said, but his voice lacked conviction. They were watching it happen in real time. The Nexus stalker made one final desperate attempt to free itself. It gathered its remaining strength and threw itself backward with all its power, driving both combatants into the medical bay's equipment. Storage. Surgical instruments and medical supplies scattered everywhere as the two fighters crashed through metal cabinets. The impact should have forced Taimin to release his hold, but humans had one more evolutionary advantage that the aliens had never considered: sheer, stubborn determination. Instead of letting go, Taimin tightened his grip and gave one final powerful twist. The sound that followed was loud enough to be heard through the security monitors. It was the sharp crack of bone breaking, amplified by the medical bay's metal walls. The Nexus stalker went completely limp. For several seconds, no one moved. Taimin remained in his chokehold position, making sure the creature was truly dead. The galaxy's most feared apex predator lay motionless beneath him, its neck bent at an unnatural angle. Slowly, Taimin released his grip and stood up. He was Covered in blood from numerous cuts, his uniform was destroyed, and he moved with the careful steps of someone fighting exhaustion and pain. But he was alive, and the Nexus stalker was dead. "Status report," he said calmly, as if he had just finished a routine training exercise instead of killing a creature that had terrorized entire star systems. Dr. Yun So-ra emerged from behind her overturned table, staring at the scene in shock. "Taemin, you did it! You actually killed it!" "Are you injured?" he asked, checking her for wounds. "Minor cuts, nothing serious." She looked at his blood-soaked form. "You need medical attention immediately." "Later. First we need to secure the area and make sure there aren't any more surprises on that smuggler ship." The blast door to Section C opened as Captain Vexistar and his security team finally entered. The aliens moved carefully, their eyes fixed on the dead Nexus stalker. They had seen the battle through security monitors, but witnessing the aftermath in person was different. Security Chief Grolnax approached the creature's body and examined it with professional interest. The neck was clearly broken, and there were numerous impact points where Taemin's attacks had damaged the supposedly impenetrable armor. "How?" the Bruggen asked simply. Taemin looked at the dead predator, then at the gathered aliens. It was strong and fast, but it had never fought anything that fought back. Once I realized that, the rest was just technique. Just technique, Captain Vextar repeated slowly. "You killed the galaxy's apex predator with technique." "And persistence," Taemin added. "It gave up before I did." As medical teams arrived to treat his wounds, Taemin caught sight of himself in a broken medical mirror. He looked like something from a nightmare, blood-covered, exhausted, and bearing the marks of a battle that should have been impossible to survive. But he had won, and in doing so, he had changed how the galaxy would view humanity forever. 3 hours after the battle, Lee Taemin sat in the medical bay while Dr. Yun So-ra treated his wounds. The cuts were deep but not life-threatening, and the bleeding had stopped. His torn diplomatic uniform had been replaced with simple medical clothing, but his calm demeanor remained unchanged. 47 separate cuts, So-ra said as she applied healing gel to his arms. "Any one of these wounds would have sent most species into shock. How are you still conscious?" "Practice," Taemin replied simply. Around them, the medical bay was being rebuilt. Engineer Park Min-ho worked with his team to repair the damaged walls and equipment. The destruction was extensive, but Min-ho seemed more interested in studying the claw marks than fixing them. "Look at this," Min-ho said, running his thick fingers along a gouge in the metal wall. The creature's claws cut right through reinforced hull plating. "But see these dents? That's where Taemin slammed it into the wall. A human did that with his bare hands." Captain Vextar entered the medical bay, followed by the ship's senior officers and diplomatic staff. The reptilian captain's scales had returned to their normal green color, but his yellow eyes showed a new wariness when he looked at Taemin. "The smugglers have been arrested," Vextar announced. Their ship contained 3 more containment units, all empty. The Nexus Stalker was their only cargo. "Lucky for us," Security Chief Grolnax added. His gray skin was still pale from stress. "One creature nearly destroyed this ship. Multiple stalkers would have killed everyone aboard." "Would they?" asked a new voice. Everyone turned to see an ancient alien entering the medical bay. This was Elder Priest Zalthon of the Velthari, the oldest being on the ship. His fur was white with age, and his large eyes held the wisdom of centuries. Zalthon rarely spoke during the journey, preferring to observe and listen. Elder, Ambassador, Threll said respectfully. What do you mean? Zalthon moved slowly toward the dead Nexus stalker, which lay covered by a protective sheet. There are old stories, he said in his quiet voice. Warnings passed down through generations of spacefaring species. Legends about creatures from death worlds. Death worlds? Captain Vextar asked. Planets so hostile that only the strongest, most adaptable life forms survive. Most worlds that produce intelligent life are relatively peaceful places. But some worlds... Zalthon paused, studying Taemin with ancient eyes. Some worlds forge their children in constant warfare. Dr. Yunso Ra looked up from treating Taemin's wounds. Are you saying Earth is a death world? Consider the evidence, Zalthon replied. Your planet has creatures called sharks, bears, lions, tigers, venomous snakes, poisonous spiders, and countless other apex predators. Your ancestors survived by competing with all of them. Every planet has dangerous animals, Ambassador Threll protested. Not like Earth, most worlds have one or two apex predators. Earth has dozens. Your species didn't just survive alongside them, you dominated them all. Zalthon's fur rippled with something that might have been fear. The old warnings speak of persistence hunters, creatures that could track prey across vast distances, that never gave up, that kept fighting even when mortally wounded. Pilot Quan Dongsu frowned. You're talking about humans like we're monsters. Not monsters, Zalthon corrected. Survivors. Your species evolved traits that peaceful worlds never required. The ability to continue functioning despite pain, to fight when retreat would be logical, to never surrender even against superior opponents. Navigator Choi Hai-jin had been monitoring communications throughout the conversation. Her face was troubled as she approached the group. Elder Zalthon, I'm receiving reports from across the galaxy. Word of the Nexus Stalker incident is spreading through alien communication networks. What kind of reports? Captain Vextar asked. Fear, Hai-jin said simply. Multiple species are requesting emergency security briefings about human capabilities. Some are demanding restrictions on human travel to their worlds. That's ridiculous, Dr. Yun Sora said. Taemin was protecting his crew. He's not a threat. To anyone, isn't he? Elder Zalthon asked softly. A single human killed the galaxy's most feared predator using only basic tools and his bare hands. What does that tell other species about human potential? Engineer Park Min-ho looked up from his repairs. It tells them that we're tougher than we look. It tells them that they have been sharing space with apex predators without knowing it, Zalthon corrected. Every species in the galaxy has classifications for dangerous life forms. Humans were listed as harmless diplomats. That classification is now under review. The communication system activated, and Admiral Wei Jin-suk's face appeared on the main screen. The Admiral was a stern woman in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's space fleet, and her expression was serious. Captain Vextar, I need to speak with diplomat Lee Tae-min immediately. Admiral, Tae-min said, standing despite his injuries. Reporting as ordered. At ease, Tae-min. I've received preliminary reports about the incident. Are you injured? Minor wounds, Admiral. Nothing that will affect my duties. Admiral Wei's expression softened slightly. Good. I need you to understand the bigger picture here. In the past 6 hours, we've received communications from 47 different species requesting information about human military capabilities. 3 species have asked for immediate renegotiation of existing treaties. Why? Dr. Yunsora asked. Because they're afraid, Admiral Wei replied bluntly. For 200 years, humans have been seen as the galaxy's peacekeepers, useful for diplomacy precisely because we were considered physically weak. That perception has changed overnight. Captain Vex's Tar stepped forward. Admiral, with respect, one incident should not change galactic relations. Captain, your security footage has been seen by millions of beings across 12 species. They watched a human tear apart their ultimate nightmare using nothing but determination and basic combat skills. Admiral Wei's voice became grim. Some species are calling for immediate restrictions on human movement. Others want to know if we've been hiding our true nature. We haven't hidden anything, Taemin said. We simply haven't advertised our capabilities. That's about to change. The Galactic Council has called an emergency session to discuss human classification. You'll be required to testify about your actions. Elder Zalthon spoke up. Admiral, if I may offer perspective, this revelation might actually improve human standing in the galaxy. Respect is often based on strength. Or it might make everyone afraid of us. Navigator Choi Hyejin added quietly. Admiral Wei nodded. That's the question we'll have to answer. Are humans going to be seen as protectors or threats? The conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert from the ship's sensors. Multiple vessels were approaching their position, military ships from several different species. This is Fleet Captain Mordak of the Corvani Empire, came a transmission. We request permission to board and inspect the deceased Nexus Stalker. This is Admiral Grex of the Chithari Defense Force. We wish to verify reports of human combat capabilities. Bruggen Military Command requesting immediate consultation with human personnel. Captain Vextar looked overwhelmed as requests continued. Coming in from across the galaxy. Admiral Wei, every major military force wants to see what happened here. Then we'll show them, Admiral Wei replied. But we'll do it on our terms. Captain, proceed to Kepler 442b as planned. The peace talks will happen as scheduled, but I suspect the discussions will be very different than originally planned. After the transmission ended, the medical bay fell silent. The implications of what had happened were still sinking in for everyone present. So what happens now? Dr. Yunsora asked. Elder Zalthon looked at the dead Nexus Stalker, then at Taemin. Now the galaxy learns what humans really are. Not harmless diplomats, but apex predators who chose diplomacy over violence. That choice becomes much more meaningful when others understand what you're capable of. Will they respect us or fear? Us? Engineer Park Min-ho asked. Probably both, Captain Vextar said quietly. And perhaps that's exactly what galactic peace requires. As the Harmony's Edge continued toward Kepler 442b, word of the incident spread throughout the galaxy. In military academies, the security footage became required viewing. In diplomatic schools, human psychology became a mandatory subject. In the databases of every major species, humanity's classification changed from harmless mediators to apex predator. Exercise extreme caution. Lee Taemin looked out the observation window at the approaching planet where the peace talks would be held. He wondered if the other species would still want human mediators, now that they knew what humans were truly capable of. Perhaps they would want them even more. After all, peace negotiations carried much more weight when conducted by someone who could tear a Nexus Stalker apart with their bare hands.